There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a woman's life just before it shatters. It isn't peaceful, it is heavy, pressurized. Like the air before a summer storm breaks the heat. I felt that silence the moment I stepped into the lobby of the Grand Meridian. I wasn't supposed to be there. According to my husband, Mark, he was currently embroiled in a high-stakes regional conference for his logistics firm. A firm, I might add, that was built on the back of my inheritance and sustained by my credit score. He had told me the schedule was grueling. He said he would be too exhausted to talk. "Don't wait up, Rosie," he had said, kissing my cheek with that distracted, perfunctory affection men develop after 30 years of marriage. I'll be buried in spreadsheets until midnight. But I had wanted to surprise him. Our 40th anniversary was approaching, and the distance between us lately had felt less like a gap and more like a canyon. I had packed his favorite scotch, a bottle of the Macallan 25 that cost more than my first car, and booked a spa treatment for 2. I wanted to bridge the canyon. I wanted to be the wife who made the effort. The one who didn't let the fire die out simply because we were getting older. I walked across the marble floor, the click-clack of my low heels echoing in the cavernous, gold-leafed space. The air smelled of expensive stargazer lilies and floor wax. I approached the reception desk, adjusting the silk scarf around my neck, preparing my loving wife smile. That was when I saw the hand. It was a man's hand, tanned and manicured, resting possessively on the lower back of a woman in a slate, gray cocktail dress. The hand was familiar. I knew the shape of the knuckles. I knew the specific way the thumb drummed against the fabric. I knew the watch on the wrist. A Patek Philippe Nautilus I had bought him for his 50th birthday. A watch that costs $130,000. I stopped. My breath hitched in my throat, a sharp, physical pain, as if I had swallowed a jagged piece of ice. They were standing near the elevators, 50 feet away. Mark was leaning in, whispering something into the woman's ear. The intimacy of the gesture was nauseating. It wasn't the polite lean of a colleague discussing business. It was the gravitational pull of a lover. He was inhaling her. My first thought was a cliché, who is she? I squinted, trying to make out the profile. She was younger, certainly. Slimmer than me. Her hair was a dark, glossy chestnut, styled in loose waves that tumbled over her shoulders. She threw her head back and laughed. A bright, chiming sound that cut through the low hum of the lobby. Then, she turned. The world didn't just stop, it tilted on its axis, throwing me off. The nausea didn't just rise, it flooded me. I felt the blood drain from my face so quickly that I thought I might faint right there on the Persian rug. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a secretary. It wasn't some random woman he'd met at the hotel bar. It was Chloe, my sister, my baby sister. The woman I had diapered when our mother was too sick to get out of bed. The girl I had walked to kindergarten, whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose college tuition I had paid for in full, because I wanted her to have the start in life I never did. I watched, frozen in a nightmare. As Chloe placed her hand on Mark's chest, she looked up at him with eyes that shone with adoration. The same wide, brown eyes that used to look up at me when she was afraid of the dark. But it wasn't just the betrayal of their presence that gutted me. It was the details. The devil is always in the details, and these details were screaming. Chloe was wearing a necklace. Even from this distance, I recognized the luster. It was a double strand of Akoya pearls with a diamond clasp. My mother's pearls. The pearls I kept in the velvet box in my safe. The pearls I had told Mark were too fragile to wear, except for special occasions. He must have taken them from the house while I was at my garden club meeting. He had stolen my dead mother's heirloom to drape around the neck of my sister while he cheated on me. My overnight bag slipped from my fingers. It hit the marble floor with a heavy thud, the leather slapping the stone with a sound like a gunshot. Mark and Chloe didn't hear it. They were too wrapped up in their own private universe. The elevator doors chimed, sliding open with a smooth hiss. Mark guided her inside, his hand sliding lower on her waist, squeezing familiar flesh. Chloe giggled, a sound that curdled the blood in my veins. The doors closed, sealing them away. I stood there alone in the lobby, trembling. My hands were shaking so violently that I had to clasp them together to stop the spasms. A bellman approached me, concern etched on his young face. "Ma'am, are you all right? Can I help you with your bag?" I looked at him, but I didn't see him. I saw only the ghost of the last 30 years incinerating in front of my eyes. I saw the Christmas dinners, the shared vacations, and the laughter. Every memory was suddenly tainted, rot spreading through the timeline of my life. "No," I whispered, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears, like dry leaves scraping over concrete. "I don't think anyone can help me." I didn't storm the elevator. I didn't scream. I am Rose Vance, and I have always believed that dignity is a weapon best wielded in silence. I picked up my bag. My knees felt weak, like water, but I forced my spine straight. I walked to the front desk. The concierge, a man named Henry who had known my family for years, smiled. "Mrs. Vance!" What a lovely surprise. "Mr. Vance just went up. Shall I give you a key to the Sapphire Suite?" The Sapphire Suite. The room Mark and I had stayed in for our honeymoon 20 years ago. The room where we had promised to love each other until death parted us. He had taken her there? "No, Henry," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I won't be joining my husband just yet. I need a separate room, a quiet one. On a different floor." Henry blinked, confused. But he saw something in my eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there a moment ago, and he didn't ask questions. "Of course, Mrs. Vance. I have a suite on the 14th floor." As I signed the credit card slip, I glanced at the clock on the wall. 6:42 p.m. This was the time of death. Not of my body, but of the woman I used to be. The trusting, loving, foolish Rose was dead, and the woman who took her place, she was ready to burn the whole world down. Once I was alone in my room, sitting on the edge of a bed that felt too large and too cold. The shock began to recede, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache in the center of my chest. It wasn't a heartbreak. It was the agony of realizing I had been financing my own destruction. I closed my eyes and let the history of us wash over me, trying to pinpoint the moment the rot had started. I had always been the provider. It was an unconventional dynamic for our generation, perhaps, but it worked for us, or so I thought. My father had been a textile magnate, and when he passed, he left everything to me. I was the responsible one, the rock. Chloe was the wildflower, beautiful, chaotic, and perpetually in need of saving. I remembered sitting at my kitchen table 10 years ago, writing a 45,000 check to clear Chloe's credit card debt. She had been crying, her mascara running down her cheeks, swearing she would get her life together. "You're the best sister in the world, Rose," she had sobbed, hugging me. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'd be destitute," I thought now, staring at the beige hotel wallpaper. "You'd be waiting tables in a diner, not drinking champagne in the Sapphire Suite." And Mark. Oh, Mark. I met him when he was a junior logistics coordinator, driving a rusted Honda Civic and wearing suits that didn't fit. He had ambition, though. He had a fire in him that I found intoxicating. I didn't mind that he had no money. I had enough for both of us. When he wanted to start his own firm, I liquidated a portion of my portfolio to give him the 250,000 seed capital. I didn't ask for equity. I didn't ask for a controlling stake. I just wanted him to feel like a king. "I'm doing this for us, Rosie," he had told me, his eyes shining. "So I can buy you the world." I looked down at my hands. They were aging, veined, spotted with time. I had spent my youth building their lives. I had nursed Mark through his heart surgery 4 years ago. I slept in the uncomfortable hospital chair for 3 weeks, wiping his brow, feeding him ice chips, holding the bedpan, because he was too proud to let the nurses do it. I sacrificed my own comfort to preserve his dignity. And how had he repaid me? The signs had been there, blazing like neon lights, but I had been willfully blind. The change started about 6 months ago. Mark, who used to complain about walking the dog, suddenly developed an obsession with the gym. He bought a Peloton and rode it every morning at 500 a.m. He started purchasing slim, fit suits. He got his teeth whitened. "I have to stay competitive, Rose," he'd said when I asked about the sudden vanity. "It's a young man's game out there." And then there was the mentoring. Chloe had suddenly taken an interest in logistics. Logistics. A woman who couldn't balance a checkbook was suddenly fascinated by supply chains. Mark had offered to show her the ropes. "She's family, Rose," he had said, looking me right in the eye. "If I can help her get a stable career, isn't that what you want? You're always worrying about her." I had smiled. I had actually thanked him. I thanked my husband for spending hours in his office with my sister. Hearing their muffled laughter through the door, thinking they were bonding over spreadsheets. I remembered a specific conversation from 2 months ago. It was Sunday dinner. Chloe was sitting across from us, looking radiant. "You're glowing, Chloe," I had said, passing the roast potatoes. "Is there a new man in your life?" She had glanced at Mark. Just a flicker of the eyes. And smiled. "Sort of. It's complicated. But he treats me like a queen." "Good," I had said, reaching out to squeeze Mark's hand. "You deserve that. Find a man who looks at you the way Mark looks at me." The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. They must have laughed about that later. They must have been texting each other under the table, while I cleared the dishes. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city lights. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. A pale, foolish older woman. But as I stared, something shifted. The tears that had been threatening to fall evaporated. The heat in my chest cooled into something solid and heavy, like lead. He thought I was the old ball and chain. He thought I was the senile bank account he could drain dry while he played house with my sister. He thought he was the smart one. He forgot one thing. I didn't just inherit my father's money. I inherited his ruthlessness. I was the one who managed the estate. I was the one who navigated the tax laws. I was the one who knew where every single penny in our lives was buried. Mark was playing checkers. He didn't realize he was sitting across from a grandmaster. I turned away from the window and reached for my purse. I pulled out my phone. It was time to stop being the victim. It was time to become the architect of their ruin. I opened the banking app on my phone. Let's see just how much this betrayal costs, I thought. And then, let's see how much it's going to cost him. I didn't sleep. Sleep is for the innocent, and apparently for the guilty, as I imagined Mark and Chloe were currently slumbering soundly in the 800 thread count sheets of the Sapphire Suite. I sat in the wingback chair of my darkened room, the glow of my iPad illuminating my face in spectral blue. My hands were steady now. The trembling had ceased the moment I decided to stop being a wife and start being an auditor. I am a woman who keeps receipts. Literally. I have binders of tax returns dating back to 1998. Mark, on the other hand, treats passwords like suggestions. He uses the same password for everything Logistics 8A. He thinks it's clever. I think it's a liability. I logged into his cloud account first. It took 3 seconds. The digital synchronization began, and my screen filled with the backup data from his phone. I felt a strange sense of detachment, like a coroner examining a body. I wasn't looking for a heartbeat. I was looking for the cause of death. I went to the photos first. There they were, hundreds of them. Mark and Chloe were at a baseball game 3 months ago. He told me he was at a client dinner. Mark and Chloe on a boat. He told me he was at a logistics seminar in Miami. A selfie of the two of them in bed, his arm draped over her, her head resting on his chest, smug satisfaction painted on her face. The timestamps were damning. August 12, 2014 p.m. I was at the dentist getting a crown replaced. They were at a vineyard. September 4, 11:30 p.m. I was calling him to say goodnight. Worried because he hadn't checked in. In the photo, they are holding champagne flutes. Then, I opened the banking app. I had always respected his privacy regarding his personal spending money, an allowance I provided. But tonight, privacy was a luxury he had forfeited. The sheer volume of the theft was breathtaking. October 1st, Tiffany & Co. A fourth orders 200. I remembered that week. Chloe had come over for Sunday brunch wearing a new diamond tennis bracelet. A gift from a secret admirer. She had giggled. I had told her it was beautiful. I had complimented the jewelry my husband bought her with my money. November 15th. The Ritz-Carlton Spy, 50. The Ivy Restaurant, 640. November 15th, Uber Black, 120. I checked my own calendar for November 15th. It was the day I visited my mother's grave. Mark had said he couldn't come because he had to crunch numbers. He was crunching numbers. All right. But the text messages were the final nail in the coffin. I scrolled back weeks, months. It wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy. They weren't just lovers, they were partners in crime, and I was the mark. Chloe's yesterday, 4:30 p.m. Is the old ball and chain suspicious? Mark's yesterday, 4:32 p.m. Not a clue. She's too busy pruning her roses. She thinks I'm the hardest working man in America. Chloe, God, she's so dull. I don't know how you did it for 30 years. Mark, I did it for the lifestyle, babe. And don't worry. Once I get her to sign the updated trust documents, we're clear. We'll put her in a nice facility when she gets too old to manage, and we'll take the lake house. I stared at the screen. A nice facility. They were planning my obsolescence. They were discussing my institutionalization like they were deciding where to board a dog. I read on. Chloe. Do you think she'll wear that ugly gray dress to the gala next week? Mark. Probably. She has zero taste. That's why I need you. You're the upgrade. The upgrade. I set the iPad down on the table. The silence in the room was deafening. I walked to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. I saw the lines around my eyes, the softness of my jaw. I was 70 years old. I wasn't an upgrade. But looking into my own eyes, I saw something Mark had evidently forgotten. I saw the daughter of joyous, ruthless capitalism. I saw the woman who fired a contractor for overcharging me 17 cents on lumber. He wanted the trust documents. He wanted the lake house. Okay, Mark. I whispered to the empty room. You want to play games? Let's see who folds first. The next morning, I dressed with military precision. I chose a beige linen suit and a wide, brimmed hat. The kind of outfit that makes an older woman blend into the background of a high-end hotel like expensive wallpaper. I was the invisible demographic. I went down to the La Veranda restaurant at 8:00 a.m. I knew Mark's routine. He liked his eggs Benedict and his double espresso before work. I spotted them immediately. They were seated in a semi-private booth near the fountain, bathed in morning sunlight. It was a sickeningly picturesque scene. Chloe was wearing a white sundress, looking fresh and youthful. Mark was reading the Wall Street Journal, looking the part of the distinguished executive. I tipped the hostess $50. I'd like that table behind the oversized ferns, please. I need to review some papers in peace. She obliged. I sat down, my back to them, separated only by a dense screen of fox, tropical foliage. I ordered black coffee and waited. Their voices carried. They were comfortable. They thought they were safe in their bubble of deceit. The conference schedule is a joke, Mark was saying. I only have to show my face for the keynote at noon. We have the whole morning. Chloe hummed. I heard the clink of silverware. What about Rose? Did she call? Left a voicemail. She's probably at the garden center. Honestly, it's better she's not blowing up my phone. It's exhausting pretending to care about her hydrangeas. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. My hydrangeas were award-winning. You son of a bitch. So, Chloe said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming serious. When are we doing this, Mark? You said by Christmas. I know. Mark sighed. I'm working on it. The lawyer drafted the transfer papers for the lake house yesterday. I'm going to tell her it's for tax protection. She trusts me. She'll sign anything I put in front of her. I just want us to be real, Chloe whined. I'm tired of hiding. I want to spend Christmas at the lake house with you, without worrying about her showing up. You will, Mark promised. Listen to me. Rose she's done. She's checked out. She's just existing. She's pathetic, really, clinging to the past, polishing her silver. She doesn't even realize the world has moved on without her. Pathetic. The word hung in the air, suspended in the scent of roasted coffee and bacon. She's just existing. I felt a cold snap in my chest. It wasn't a break. It was a setting of bone. For the last 24 hours, I had been operating on grief and shock. I had been asking myself what I did wrong. Was I too old? Was I not affectionate enough? Was I too focused on my charity work? But that word cleared the fog. I wasn't pathetic. I was the host organism, and he was the parasite. He wasn't staying with me out of loyalty or even pity. He was staying with me because I was his golden goose. He was waiting for me to sign over the last piece of leverage, the lake house my father built with his own hands. So he could discard me. He didn't just want to leave me, he tried to strip mine me first. I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter, scalding hot. It tasted like fuel. I pulled out my phone. I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I opened my contacts and found the number for my personal banker, Mr. Henderson. Then I saw the number for our family attorney, the one who had drawn up the prenup 30 years ago that Mark had laughed off as a formality. Then, I looked at the time, 8:15 a.m. Pathetic, I whispered, tasting the word, testing its weight. I stood up, I didn't look at them. I didn't need to see them again until the trap was set. Mark wanted a tax strategy. I'd give him a tax strategy. He wanted the lake house. I'd make sure he never set foot on that property again without a trespassing warrant. I walked out of the restaurant, the heels of my shoes striking the floor with a rhythmic, predatory cadence. It was time to make a few calls. It was time to invite the family to dinner. Mark thought he was the hunter. He was about to find out he was the bait. Revenge, I discovered, is a lot like hosting a gala. It requires impeccable timing, a guest list, and a budget. And since Mark was so fond of spending my money, I decided to let him foot the bill for his own execution. I returned to my room on the 14th floor and set up my command center. My first call was to Aunt Martha. Every family has a broadcast system. Some use group chats, the Vances use Aunt Martha. She is 82 years old, deaf in one ear, and yet hears everything. If you tell Martha a secret at noon, the cousins in Idaho know by 12:15. Rose. Her voice crackled over the line. Is everything all right? You sound intense. I'm better than all right, Martha, I said, infusing my voice with a manic, breathless excitement. I'm ecstatic. Listen, Mark has gone completely overboard. He's planned a surprise family reunion dinner tonight at the Grand Meridian. He wanted to surprise me for our anniversary, but he's too shy to invite everyone himself. A surprise dinner, Martha gasped. Tonight. Yes, in the private dining room, the Sapphire Room. He wants everyone there. David, the cousins, the kids. He said, Rose, get the whole family together. It's on the company. I want to celebrate our legacy. Oh, that man is a saint, Martha cried. I'll call David immediately. He's just a few towns over at the hardware convention. Yes, make sure David comes, I said, my voice dropping to a solemn whisper. It's essential to Mark that his father-in-law is there. He has a special announcement. I'm on it, darling! I hung up. The bait was in the water. David, Chloe's father, my stepfather, was a man of old-school principles. He was a retired Marine who polished his shoes every Sunday. He adored Mark. He thought Mark was the son he never had. This was going to break his heart. And that guilt stung me for a moment. But David deserved the truth. He deserved to know that his golden boy, son-in-law, was sleeping with his youngest daughter. Next, I dialed Mr. Henderson at the bank. Mrs. Vance. He answered on the first ring. To what do I owe the pleasure? Mr. Henderson, I'm reviewing the accounts for Vance Logistics. I've noticed some irregular activity on the primary corporate AMX. The one ending in 45998. Irregular, Mom. Yes. Several charges in the last 24 hours that don't match our travel protocols. I'm worried the card has been cloned. To be safe, I need you to freeze it immediately. Of course. I can put it on hold right now. Do you want me to issue a new one to Mark? No, I said smoothly. Let's not worry him while he's at the conference. Just freeze it. If he tries to use it, let it decline. We can sort out the fraud on Monday. Consider it done, Mrs. Vance. I smiled. The financial guillotine was primed. My final stop was the Mac Tray D. I went down to the restaurant at 4:00 p.m., 2 hours before the dinner. The restaurant was empty, save for the staff setting tables. I found a young waiter named Julian. He looked ambitious and slightly bored. Excuse me? I said, holding up a $100 bill folded neatly between my fingers. He perked up instantly. How can I help you? Ma'am. My husband is dining in the Sapphire Room tonight. It's a surprise anniversary celebration. I placed another 100 on the table. I have a particular entrance planned. A sort of comedic roast. Julian nodded, eyeing the cash. Okay. I need access to the room service cart. The champagne cart. I want to be the one to push it in. I added 3 more 100 to the pile. $500 total. And I need you to connect my phone to the smart TV in the private dining room before they arrive. I have a slideshow prepared. Julian looked at the money, then at me. He saw a harmless old lady with a bob haircut and a string of pearls. Carrying a detonator. No problem. He grinned, sweeping the cash into his pocket. I love a good roast. Oh. Julian, I said, patting his arm. This one is going to be legendary. At 6:55 p.m., I stood outside the heavy oak double doors of the Sapphire Room. The hallway was quiet, lined with plush velvet runners that muffled my footsteps. I was dressed in my uniform for the evening, a sharp black dress that cost more than Mark's car, and my hair swept up in a severe, regal chignon. I wore no jewelry. I wanted nothing to distract from the pearls Chloe was wearing. I could hear them inside. The sound of their laughter drifted through the woods. It was light, airy, unburdened. It was the sound of 2 people who thought they had gotten away with murder. To the lake house, I heard Mark say. The clinking of crystal followed. To us, Chloe replied. And to freedom. My hand gripped the handle of the silver room service cart. On top of it sat a bucket of ice containing a bottle of Dom Pérignon, the 1996 vintage. The vintage from the year we got married. Beside it was the bill, tucked into a black leather folder. I took a deep breath. This was the threshold. Once I crossed it, there was no going back. The marriage was over. The sisterhood was over. I checked my phone. The family group chat was lighting up. Aunt Martha. We are in the lobby, so excited! David just parking the truck. Tell Mark I'm bringing the good cigars. They were 5 minutes away. Perfect. I signaled Julian, who was standing by the service entrance. He gave me a thumbs up. The TV inside was prepped. I didn't knock. I pushed the doors open with a decisive shove, the cart rattling slightly as I rolled it over the threshold. Room service for the happy couple, I announced, my voice projecting clearly across the room. The scene before me was like a tableau from a bad romance novel. The room was dim, lit only by flickering votive candles. Rose petals, my favorite flower, were scattered across the white tablecloth. In the center of the table sat a black box with the La Perla logo. Lingerie. Mark and Chloe were seated close together on the banquet. Mark's arm was around her shoulders. Chloe's head was resting on his chest. When they saw me, the reaction was visceral. Mark didn't just stand up. He practically leaped, knocking his water glass over. The crystal shattered, water soaking the tablecloth. But nobody noticed. His face went from flushed to ash gray in a nanosecond. "Rose!" he choked out, his voice cracking. Chloe froze. She looked like a deer in headlights, her eyes wide, her hand instinctively going to her throat, clutching the pearls. My pearls. I kept pushing the cart until I was right next to the table. I parked it with a deliberate clink. "I hope I'm not interrupting," I said. My tone pleasant, conversational. Although, judging by the itinerary, I believe this is the time allotted for strategy meetings. "Rose, wait. Listen." Mark stammered, holding his hands up as if to ward off a physical attack. He stepped away from Chloe, putting distance between them. "It's not what it looks like. Chloe," she called me. She was having a panic attack about her job. She was hysterical. I just brought her in here to calm her down. I looked at the champagne. I looked at the rose petals. I looked at the lingerie box. "A panic attack?" I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it now? And does the cure for anxiety usually involve French lace panties and a $300 bottle of wine?" "I bought those for you," Mark lied, his desperation making him sweat. "I was shopping for your anniversary gift." Chloe was just helping me choose the size. "She's helping you choose the size," I said, turning my gaze to my sister. Chloe couldn't meet my eyes. She was shrinking into the banquet, trying to make herself small. "Chloe," I said softly, "look at me." She slowly lifted her head. Her makeup was perfect. Her lips were stained with red wine. "Did you help him pick the size?" I asked. "Or did you just try them on to make sure they'd fit the upgrade?" Chloe flinched. Mark's jaw dropped. "How did you? How did I know?" I laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Mark, you use your birthday as your password. You're not James Bond. You're a cliché." I walked over to the smart TV mounted on the wall. I picked up the remote. "Rose, stop," Mark said, his voice dropping to a menacing growl. He took a step toward me. "Don't make a scene. We can talk about this at home. You're being irrational." "Irrational." I tapped the remote. The screen flickered to life. My phone screen was mirrored there. Giant and high definition. The first image was a selfie of them in bed. The one where Mark looked like the cat who got the cream. "I think I'm being incredibly rational," I said. "I'm just reviewing the data. That's what we do in logistics." Mark barked. "Now? Or what?" I challenged him. "You'll leave me? Will you take the lake house? You'll put me in a facility." Mark went silent. The blood drained from his face completely. He realized, finally, that I knew everything. "I didn't want to do this, Rose," he whispered, trying a new tactic, pity. "I didn't want to hurt you. But we fell in love. You have to understand we have a connection." "Connection?" I scoffed. "You have a conspiracy." I heard the rumble of voices in the hallway outside. The heavy footsteps of men. The high-pitched chatter of excited children. "Rose, please." Chloe spoke for the first time, her voice trembling. "Please don't tell Dad. He'll kill me. We can fix this. I'll leave. I'll quit. Just don't tell Dad." I looked at my sister. The girl I had raised. The girl who was currently wearing my mother's soul around her neck, while betraying mine. "I don't have to tell him," I said, looking at the double doors. The voices were right outside now. "Rose, who is out there?" Mark asked, terror filling his eyes. I smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had just lit the fuse and was walking away from the explosion. "Save your breath, Mark," I said, gesturing to the doors. "You're going to need it for the audience." I reached out and threw the double doors wide open. "Press!" screamed 20 members of the Vance family, streaming into the room with balloons, cameras, and wide, expecting smiles. The word hung in the air for exactly 3 seconds. It was a joyous, raucous sound. A wall of noise created by people who loved me. Aunt Martha was waving a happy anniversary banner. My cousin Sarah was holding a bouquet of hydrangeas. David, my stepfather, stood tall in his Sunday best, a box of Monte Cristo cigars tucked under his arm, a broad, proud grin on his weathered face. Then, the sound died. It didn't taper off. It was severed, as if someone had cut the power to the room. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. 20 pairs of eyes darted around the sapphire room, trying to process the visual dissonance. They saw the romantic candlelight. They saw the red rose petals scattered on the floor. They saw the open box of black lace lingerie on the table. And then, they saw the screen. The 65-inch smart TV was still glowing bright, projecting the screenshot I had queued up. It was the text exchange from yesterday. The font was large enough for everyone to read, even Aunt Martha. Mark, don't worry, babe, soon we'll have her life insurance. See? And we can really live. She's just a pathetic cash cow. I watched David read it. I saw his lips move slightly as he sounded out the words. I saw the confusion on his face curdle into a horrifying realization. He looked from the screen to Mark, then to Chloe, and finally to the lingerie on the table. Mark, David said. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low, rumbling vibration, like a tectonic plate shifting before an earthquake. What is that? Mark was paralyzed. He looked like a man standing in the path of a tsunami, holding up a paper umbrella. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at the family, then at me, his eyes pleading for a lifeline I had absolutely no intention of throwing. It's a joke, Mark wheezed, his face glistening with sweat. David. A roast! Rose set it up! A roast! I stepped forward, my heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I was calm. I was the eye of the storm. I don't think sleeping with my sister is a punchline, Mark. Although, looking at you now, you are certainly a joke. A collective gasp ripped through the room. Aunt Martha dropped her banner. Cousin Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. Chloe. David turned to his daughter. His eyes were watering. Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you aren't doing this to your sister. Chloe was shaking so hard the silverware on the table rattled. She looked at her father, then at Mark, but she found no shelter. Daddy. We fell in love. It just happened. Love. David's voice cracked. He looked at the screen again. She's just a pathetic cash cow. You call that love? You're plotting to bury her for money! The disgust on his face was absolute. It was the look of a man realizing his legacy was rot. He didn't yell. He simply turned his back on her. That silence was louder than any scream. I walked up to the table. I didn't look at Mark. I looked at Chloe. She was crying now, ugly, heaving sobs that smeared her mascara. She looked young, small, and stupid. But I didn't feel pity. I felt the cold clarity of justice. Stand up, I said. Rose, please, she whimpered. Stand up. She stood, her legs trembling. You took my husband, I said, my voice projecting to the back of the room so every cousin and in-law could hear. You took my dignity. You took my trust. But you will not take my mother. I reached out. My hand was steady. I found the diamond clasp of the necklace at the nape of her neck. Take them off, I commanded. Rose, don't. Mark stepped forward, trying to regain some control. You're humiliating her. I snapped my head toward him. I am reclaiming my property. Unless you bought these, Mark. Oh, wait. You can't buy anything. You spend my money. Chloe's hands fumbled with the clasp, her tears dripping onto the pearls. My mother's pearls. Finally, the clasp gave way. I took the necklace from her, feeling the cool weight of the gems in my palm. They felt heavy, like they had absorbed the sin of the last few hours. I dropped them into my purse. The tension in the room was electric. The family was frozen, a Greek chorus witnessing a tragedy. Then, the doors swung open again. It was Julian, the waiter. He walked in with the black leather bill folder, looking apologetic, but secretly thrilled by the drama. "Excuse me, Mr. Vance," Julian said, his voice cutting through the heavy atmosphere. "There seems to be a problem with the card on file." "The SIN's card frozen. Fraud alert." Mark's face went from gray to ghostly white. "That's impossible. Rerun it." "I did, sir. It's declined. The bill is forth 800. Mark turned to me, desperation glowing at his eyes. "Rose. Fix this. Don't do this here. Not in front of everyone." I smiled. It was a genuine smile, perhaps the first one I'd had in years. "Fix it?" I asked. "Why would I fix it?" "It's a corporate card, Mark. And corporate cards are for employees." I took a step closer to him, invading his space, forcing him to look me in the eye. "And as the majority shareholder of Vance Logistics," I said, my voice crisp and final, "I am terminating your employment. For cause embezzlement, misuse of company funds, and gross misconduct." "You can't do that," he whispered. "I built that company." "You manage that company," I corrected him. "I bought that company. And now, you're trespassing." I turned to Julian. "Please call security. Mr. Vance is unable to pay his bill, and he is refusing to leave the premises." Julian nodded, pulling out his radio. I turned back to the family. They were stunned silent, staring at me with a mixture of shock and awe. I adjusted my silk scarf. "I'm sorry, everyone," I said, my voice steady. "There won't be a dinner tonight. But anyone who wants to join me at the bar for a drink is welcome. The first round is on me. I'm celebrating." The image of Mark being escorted out of the Grand Meridian by 2 burly security guards, while dragging his rolling suitcase, is one I will cherish forever. He tried to shout something about lawyers, but nobody was listening. Chloe didn't leave with him. She ran to the bathroom to hide. David waited for her outside, not to comfort her, but to drive her home and pack her bags. He told me later that she is currently living in a studio apartment in Ohio, working as a receptionist. We haven't spoken. I don't plan to. That was 3 months ago. I am sitting on the terrace of a villa in Tuscany now. The air smells of lemon zest and sun, baked stone. I have a glass of Chianti in one hand and a pen in the other. The divorce was swift. My receipts were so thorough that Mark's lawyer advised him to settle immediately or face criminal charges for the embezzlement. He walked away with his clothes, his Peloton, and a heavy dose of public shame. He is currently living in a rented condo near the airport and is looking for work. It turns out, fired for embezzlement is a stain that doesn't wash out of a rawe summe easily. I sold the lake house. Mark thought that house was his leverage, his prize. To me, it was just a building filled with memories of a man who never really existed. I sold it to a lovely young couple from Chicago for 20% above market value. I used the money to start a scholarship fund for women, starting their own businesses later in life. I called it the Rose Vance Initiative. I looked down at my wrist. I wasn't wearing a watch. I didn't care what time it was anymore. My time was finally my own. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted rich, complex, and entirely mine. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Revenge is a dish best served publicly, with a side of freeze, dried assets, and garnished with absolute truth. I lost a husband. I lost a sister. But as I looked out over the rolling Italian hills, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face, a face that looked 10 years younger without the weight of a lie dragging it down, I realized something. I didn't lose anything. I just took out the trash. I set my glass down and looked at the camera in my mind, addressing the women who might be reading this, the women who feel that silence before the storm. Ladies, I whispered to the wind, did I go too far? Or was it justice? We both know the answer.